Hi everyone. So this next project is going to involve using the Loft Tool. But before we get to that, I want to show you some examples of the Loft Tool, sure, but also some very similar tools in the Pipe Tool and Sweep Tool, which do very similar things, but with a little bit of difference, and difference enough to where they can become valuable in both this project and other stuff. So just to give you some examples, let's switch over and have a look at Fusion. All right. So far we have been using the simple tools of things like extrude, which takes a flat sketch and pulls that in one direction, or revolve, which takes a forward sketch and rotates that around to make a round object. But I want to show you some other stuff. So under the create tool, the drop down here, first up is the next option under revolve is sweep. It is a very similar tool to down here, pipe. What these both do is generates a rounded body, or rather a body based on a generated profile or a created profile along a path. And a path is just simply a line. It can be a straight line. It can be like a fit point spline curved line, or you could even use some of the predetermined sketch designs like ellipse, square, circle, modify them from there, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you can generate between those. And then the other tool that we're going to be discussing both with this and with the next project is the Loft tool, which can create between two separate sketches. But to begin, let's just start with drawing a path, and then we can modify it from there. So to draw a path, I'm going to start a sketch. I'm going to use the right in front of me plane, the XZ plane, and I'm just going to draw a little doodle here. So I'm going to use a fit point spline and something, just kind of drawing along and making a doodle. Okay, that's it. Remember, you can adjust your fit point spline by either dragging the vertices around and where they need to be, or adjusting the handlebars to tweak that line. Both are options. So finish sketch. Okay, great. So first I want to use the pipe tool, because a pipe tool will generate its own profile based on a path. So like there, path is the line we just drew, and it automatically will start to generate. Let me orbit around so you can see what's really happening here. It will generate a circular body around that line I just drew, that path. Now, pipe has some options here in the toolbox. The first option here where you can input is distance 1. That allows you to develop however far along your path, and it's a relative value from 0 to 1. So say I only wanted to develop half of this sketch, it would be back to 0.5. And I'm using the slider here to move around, but sometimes the slider is really odd to use, especially depending on the complexity of your path. So if that were 0.5, you see it would create a path, or create a pipe around half of my line. But I'm going to go with the full thing, so leave that as a value of 1. You can also see that there's a drop down for selection. Circular, you could make this a square. You could make this a triangle. Now these are useful for if you are actually designing a profile, whatever, a project based around tubular material, or in this case, triangular, or for that matter, square tube. So if you're using like steel material, like if you're using steel tubing or PVC, something like that, some sort of tubular material, this is how you could very easily create your project, and you wouldn't have to actually try to bend obviously in Fusion, you wouldn't have to try to bend a tube. You could just bend your sketch line, your path, and then it'll generate the tubing around that. Now I keep saying tubing because one of the other things is there's a checkbox down here that says hollow. This will allow your material to either be, or your pipe to either be square solid, or if it was round solid, or you can generate a hollow, and then you can define the wall thickness, which, all right, if this thing is 15 millimeters wide, 2 millimeter wall thickness, there you go. Great. So that is what a pipe tool can do. It can generate any kind of, well, based off your based off of those presets, but it can generate a pipe tool or hollow tool, whichever, around your preset or around your designed path. So I'm going to use a new component as my operation. You could do join, cut, your standard stuffs, but new component because I'm just going to throw these out and leave these as examples for everybody. So I'm going to say, okay, component there is example pipe tool. Okay, so let's hide that. Make sure that my sketches are visible again. Now I want to show you the other one, which is a sweep. Now the difference here is a sweep tool can be used basically the same way, but you create the profile sketch. So it could be a star, a amorphous blob, whatever, but instead of a pre-generated profile like a square, a circle, or a triangle, you can draw it yourself. So with that, that means I do have to actually attach my profile sketch to this path sketch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch to left, and I'm just looking straight onto my sketch, but I'm going to orbit just a little bit so you can see a little more clearly what I'm doing. Create a sketch, and I'm working on that YZ plane or YX plane. Sorry, no, let's write the first up, YZ plane. And I want to start snapping to my that first point there. So I'm going to start the thing with a, we'll say a center rectangle. Snap to the center there, let it draw outward. Sure, 10 by 8, that's fine. Hit OK. Now let's modify this a little bit just so you can see the differences. Put a fillet on, add to there, same, there, same, great. Hit OK. Excuse me. And I'll also draw a quick doodle like with a fit point spline here, just to add a little bit of a feature to the thing. Okay, nothing special there, just drawing on that. But let me orbit around. You can see that that is on line with that sketch or with that plane there, with my path. Now, one trick is you do want to orbit or rotate, sorry, your sketch in line as best you can with that path. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all that, use the move tool, switch to front view. I've lost my drawing, and I'm going to orbit around as best I can, and it looks like it is orbiting in multiple directions, so that's a problem. I Control Z that. Let's select here and select there. Now use the move tool, make sure it's smack in the middle. Okay, much better. Now I'm just switched my view to the front view so I can see a little more clearly. What I'm going to do is just orbit my sketch. I'm just rotating it a little bit so that it fits in line. I can use my arrow keys to kind of orthogonal or orientation arrows to help me a little bit. But remember, I started that with a center point rectangle, center rectangle. So it has a coincidence attached. So that's going to mess me up. So let me hit escape. And I want to right click in the center there. I have to activate it first. And let's see here, might not let me do this just yet. Okay, fine. Let me finish sketch. Select there. And then I have to delete that coincident. All right, so you might, if you have to move this around too much, you will need to delete the coincident, but because this is just staying in place, I don't actually have to. So what I do still want to rotate this though. So go back and I'm going to open the sketch back up. Why does it keep doing this there? There we go. Hit sketch, rotate around just like I had before. Use a selection box. There we are. Use the move tool. Now, if it throws your orbit, center of orbit, something like that, way up here, remember you can reset that. I'm going to use the pivot, set pivot, select that on my toolbox, select smack in the middle there. Now, done, uncheck that box. Now when I move over to front, oops, lost it. There we go. So just rotate your sketch and use that arrow as a reference, that orthogonal direction arrow, and just try to get that close. Doesn't have to be exact, but you want it as close as you can, especially on these odd numbers here. So, okay, there we go. Super duper. That is now rotated in that direction. Finish sketch. All right. So now let me go down to now sweep. And first is selecting the profile, that drawing I just did, that sketch I just did. Next is select the path, same line we used before. Boom. Makes a very strange, because I did a weird drew a strange profile, makes a strange profile sketch, but really cool to use if you want to make more of like a custom thing. In this project we're working on next, your object will require a handle, so you can make a custom handle. Has the same set of values here. Distance is how far along your path you want it to develop. We zoom out a little bit. So again, if I put in like 0.5, it's going to just draw that thing, that profile halfway down the line. But I want to do the full thing. So 1. The other thing is you have some options here for taper. You can actually taper this down. So if I hit like 1, that's going to be too far because it's so long. If this is a really long sketch, you'd have to do like really small increments. Like 0.1 is even too much. But it actually tapers your profile all the way down along that path. I'm just going to leave that at 0. The other thing is you can actually put a twist in it. So let's say 90-degree twist. So now you can see where this profile starts with that bump ridge on the top. It ends with it 90 degrees to the left. A neat little feature. If that's something of use to you, great. If not, just leave it at 0. Leaves it the same. Cool. And there you go. So again, the difference is a sweep. I'm just going to output this as a new component again. A sweep uses your own custom profile along a path, whereas a pipe tool will use that, will generate its own profile. So there we go. Rename the part, example sweep tool. There we are. Okay. So great. I have those sketches. Unhide that. Well, what if I want to blend the two? Now, this is a lot more useful in something a little less complex here, but I'll still show it to you on here. What a loft can do, and let me pull that up again and show you the example. It creates a transitional shape. So whereas the sweep and the pipe tool both keep the same uniform profile all the way down a path, Loft can transition between two. So this is very useful for creating odd body shapes, but in this case, I'll just show it to you along a path. So let me start a new sketch, and I'm going to this time draw it down here, and I'm going to draw just like a circle here, but I'm going to do the same, snap to the other end of my path. So let's just say like 10 millimeters, great. Again, I want to rotate this. So select the thing, move, and that should be in the center, great. I'll go back to the front view so I can see what I'm doing. Rotate, so I'm as close as I can, or let me just go rotate it around the other way, doesn't matter. So I can still use my arrow as a general reference. Okay, now that circle is pretty much in line with my path. Click OK on the move. Click OK to finish the sketch. All right. So now I have my oddball profile that I drew and just a circle and my original path. So now I'm going to use the Loft tool, whereas I can select 2 or more profiles. Now it does matter the sequence that you choose, but in this case, it's just going to be one or the other because I'm only using 2 different profile sketches. We'll discuss multiple profiles on the next example. So I'm going to select one. You see it pops up in my toolbox here. Then I'm going to select the other. Now, when I do this, it's going to try and draw a direct loft between these two. You can already see, though, that it is trying to transition from my odd shape to a circle. But in this case, I want to use not the default setting, which is drawing a body between these two between these two profile sketches. So go down below your selection box here where it says guide type, from rails, which is where it generates its own, to center line. And now I can select that path. Oop. And now it does the same thing, but it slowly transitions from my odd shape down to a circle. It's a really cool tool. So I'll use the new component again, kick that out. Now we have example Loft Tool on path. Cool. Now where this would really be useful on something like this is if I generated a much smaller thing. So let's hide all of these, go back to the top, reactivate that component. Let me hide these sketches. Actually, I'm going to hide all these things. And for one, what I didn't do yet and should have done right from the get-go, save your work. So this is example. Oops. Pipe, sweep, loft on path tools. Okay, save that to our class folder. Great. Now, I just want to show you a quick reference as to what you can really do with a loft, what makes more sense to use that on a path. So first, go to front, start a new sketch. But actually, first, I want to just start a new component entirely because this is completely separate. Empty component, doesn't really matter. Parent, sure, fine, whatever. There we go. Down here. Okay. Loft ring, because that'll make sense in a moment. All right, start a new sketch right in the middle here, and I'm just going to start with a circle. So let's say, sure, 150, doesn't matter. And I'm going to cut this in half. Make a construction line. I'm just drawing it straight down too, and I'm going to trim half that circle away. So I just wanted that construction line just so I could draw that. All right, finish sketch. Let me expand down. I'm going to label this sketch as circle path. Now I'm going to do two separate sketches. And I'm going to turn my view to the left. So I'm drawing on here. I'm going to orbit a little bit over so you can see what I'm doing. So from here, I do want to use, say, like a square or a rectangle rather, and we'll just draw out to there. Great. Okay. And now I'll transition down here to circle, center, draw it out. I don't know, 15. Sure. Great. Okay. So now I have two dissimilar profiles. Finish the sketch. Now I can go back to loft, select the loft. I'm going to select my two paths. Again, it's going to try to draw a loft between those two, and it's probably giving me an error, yeah, because they're on the exact same plane. That's all right. Switch to my center line guide type, select the profile. Now you can see it is creating this from long rectangle and lofting between those to a simple circle. Again, this is in its own component, so I don't need to do that. I can just leave that as a new body. Great. So the cool thing with that is really easy to create profiles that transition from one to another. And now with a simple path like a half circle, this makes a lot more sense. Cool thing on the reason I did this way, and also the reason I call this ring loft. This is really cool if you're creating like jewelry or something like a ring or whatever have you. And now I can use the mirror tool. I want to make sure to select the bodies, this whole thing, my mirror plane, going to use the YZ plane, and it mirrors across. So cool way to create a form like that. I'm going to leave these separate, not joined, just so you can see the difference there. Okay. So there you go. So that's just another way to use the Loft tool along the path. So super cool tools. I hide that one, reactivate the whole project, and I'll leave these in here so you can select through these as you like. There's Loft, there's Sweep, and then there's Pipe, all sharing the same path. And then the Loft Ring example of what you can do with a slightly simpler path and simpler, or more simple, set of profiles. All right, so I hope that helps. And it explains the differences and uses, at least immediate uses, for Pipe, Sweep, and Loft tools. All right, good luck with it.